Welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. We have, as you can see, Sharon Salzberg back with us today, and we're really happy and really grateful, Sharon, to you for offering your time for these sessions. Just a few quick notes about our call. We're on a Zoom webinar, so all the participant audio and video are off. We can neither see nor hear you, but we can see you in the chat, and we welcome everyone from around the world today. We are going to be recording the session for anyone who's unable to attend live and for everyone to view the recording. So those are all available at tricycle.org/live. And that's also where you'll find the schedule for all of our upcoming talks, which I'll go through at the end of the call as well. But we have ones on Thursday, this Thursday evening Eastern time, as well as on Friday afternoon. Thursday evening is with Lama Das, Friday afternoon is with Jack Kornfield, and then on Sunday we have a live session with Pema Chödrön. And then we have more coming next week. We have a special series coming with Andrew Holacek on the Bardo teachings, which are particularly potent in this time. So we're adding more all the time. And again, we're really grateful to all of our teachers who are offering these sessions free of charge to the public. If you find them helpful, please consider donating at tricycle.org/donate. We will have time for Q&A with Sharon at the end of the call, so please post any questions you have in the Q&A panel. There's a button for that below the video screen. You may need to hover over the screen with your mouse for it to come up, but I see questions coming in, so it looks like people are finding that. Other than that, if you have any technical issues, you can chat to me privately or to the group, and many people have great answers for issues, so that's wonderful. Again, thank you all for joining us. We're nearing 1,400 people online right now. And I'll leave it then to you, Sharon.
Great, thank you so much. And you're such a support and help, really. I'm so tech challenged. This has been a challenging time for me. It's a challenging time for everyone. That's the least of our issues, but it's something I see in myself that, oh no, now this isn't working and I don't know how to do that. What do you mean?
Well, you've been doing a wonderful job with these.
Well, thank you. And thank you so much. And I want to thank Tricycle really for bringing us together. So I think they were actually the very first people to ask, which is beautiful. Okay, so we're going to start with just a couple of minutes of sitting together. You can close your eyes or not, however you feel most at ease, and just settle your attention into your body, onto your breath, perhaps. There's like nothing we need to figure out in the next 2 minutes, so it's pretty good. So thank you. We'll get a chance to do some practice together while we're here together. So as many of you know, I wrote a book just recently. It hasn't come out yet. It was supposed to come out June 2nd. It's now coming out September 1st. It's a book called Real Change. And because it was postponed, that's given me the opportunity to write a brand new preface for the book. So I'm not going to write it yet because things are changing so much every day, but it's a particular kind of introspection I'm doing right now. It's always funny when you've created something just before, like an enormous incident that affects everybody, and you kind of look at it and you think, does this make sense anymore? Um, I was recording some of the guided meditations just yesterday, actually, online, and in loving kindness practice, this is very in the classical sequence of the practice. There's this time when we offer loving kindness to someone known as a neutral person or somebody we don't particularly like or dislike. And the suggestion is usually that it be somebody that we tend to run into now and then because we can see how and if the relationship, the sense of connection develops over time. And the common the common example of a neutral person is a checkout person in the supermarket, because they are the kinds of people that in ordinary times we look right through, we overlook, we ignore, we take them for granted. And so I was reading this out loud and I thought, oh, wait a minute, these are like our heroes now. And this is a whole different thing. But I can't change the book, but I can write this new preface. And it's been this interesting reflection. Like, and if, in effect, I'm asking, what's still true? Like, what doesn't change? What am I relying on right now? What can we rely on that has some stability in this time of tremendous upheaval? And that actually reminds me of the term Dharma or Dhamma in Pali, Dhamma in Pali, Dharma, Dharma in Sanskrit, which is commonly translated as the Buddha's teaching or sometimes the laws of nature, the truth of things. And it has a meaning of that which sustains us, that which supports us, because it's not dependent on circumstances, on change not happening, which most of the things we rely on are kind of like that, right? Like, I'm going to keep this forever. It's never going to decay. This relationship's never going to change, or the world as I knew it, I can stop looking at because it's never going to be different. Um, the Dharma, what doesn't change? And I thought of that pretty well known phrase from the Buddha where he said, hatred will never cease by hatred. Hatred will only cease by love. This is an eternal law. Hatred will never cease by hatred. Hatred will only cease by love. This is an eternal law. And I've always kind of seen that statement and looked at that last part of it. This is an eternal law. And I thought that's kind of an odd thing to say, actually, since so much of the emphasis in the teachings is on change, all sides of change, the beautiful, renewing, opening side of change, and the kind of poignant side of how everything's so fleeting and we can't hold on, and the difficulties of that. And yet, this is an eternal law. What an interesting thing to say. And there have been times, I think, for all of us, and certainly for me, where I kind of wished it were other than that, that hatred could cease by more hatred, and because it was more near at hand. But hatred will never cease by hatred. Hatred will only cease by love. This is an eternal law. So this is kind of what I spend time reflecting on, like, what isn't so dependent on circumstance? Hatred will never cease by hatred. Hatred will only cease by love is one thing. And elements of practice, I realize I am relying on more than ever, both the doing of it and the attendant context or teachings. Sometimes it's hard to believe, it's hard to trust, and that's why it's an experiment. It's really a question of putting things into practice, seeing for ourselves, well, does this actually make sense? Is this being of benefit? Is this changing the situation, which I may have no external control over right now? What, in effect, can I control or affect? What can I influence right now? What's the dynamic that evolves? I think I talked about this last time we were together. I think often of the stress dynamic, which is really a dynamic. There's the situation, um, the circumstance, the source of stress, and then there is the resource with which it's met, because it is actually a dynamic. And the resource for me is primarily born out of my meditation practice and a sense of connection to others. And those aren't separate, actually. Those are very intertwined in different ways. So the thing about meditation practice is that it's a practice. It's like strength training. I read on Twitter somewhere, somebody very amusingly wrote, I've thought for years that if I only had the time, I could clean my house. Turned out that wasn't the problem, which I actually relate to very strongly. You know, it takes time, it takes intentionality. It doesn't take a huge amount of time. It takes, neuroscientists will say, 7 to 9 minutes a day, but you have to do it for it to have some effect. It's not like thinking fondly of it or, you know, telling someone else to do it or whatever. It's the doing of it that actually makes a difference. And part of what's cultivated in the process of meditation is this quality called equanimity. And that's another one of those things that I feel we can rely on, actually, that makes a difference. So equanimity is a term that's very difficult to understand. It's confusing in all of its forms. My first meditation teacher was S.N. Goenka, and it was a 10-day course in India in 1971. And he was always saying, be equanimous, be equanimous, be equanimous. And we used to whisper to one another, is that a word? Like, what does that mean? I don't know that word. So that's a particular form of the word equanimity, but they're all a little bit strange because to us, so often, equanimity sounds like indifference or callousness or removing ourselves from the situation, or even that kind of sullenness that can be very subtle, that hostility of like, doesn't matter to me. And equanimity doesn't mean any of that. The literal translation from the Pali is balance. And it's the balance that's born of wisdom. It means perspective, not coldness and not iciness and not disdain for our experience, but it's almost like the holding environment for our thoughts and feelings and reactions and situations. The holding environment itself can take on the flavor, the nature of more spaciousness, more ease of heart, more interest. And so there's more learning that can come out of it. And when there's space, when there's a sense of spaciousness, there's also the place for creativity, for options, which we might not see when we have the kind of inner lockdown where, you know, we're just lost, we're consumed by something that's arising or by our reaction to it. So it's not distance, really, it's spaciousness, equanimity. Within that field of greater equanimity, all kinds of things will come up. You know, life is still life. And meditation is like a little replica, you know, for those, say, 10 minutes a day. It's not suddenly going to be only bliss and peace. It's life unfolding. And that's fine, because what we're developing are the tools to meet what's going on in a different way. So it's almost like a definition of mindfulness, which would imply that we're not either getting completely consumed by what's happening and defined by it, or on the other side, we're not adding shame and dread and denial and pushing away, right? So sometimes we describe mindfulness as the place in the middle. not getting completely lost, not pushing away. And in that place in the middle, that's where the opportunity arises to understand much more deeply what might be true, what we might choose in response. So it's actually a very alive and vital state. It's not like flat, and somehow removed from what's going on, but it's holding what's going on in a different way. And the meditative process, it's almost like training a muscle. Anything might arise, and our work is to try to be with it as best we can in a different way. And when we falter and we get consumed or way reactive, we remember, oh, right, I can practice letting go. I can practice beginning again. This is also true. This is also a possibility. So I was thinking about, I'm going to look something up because I'm not a scientist and I don't always get this totally right. So I was thinking about my friend, Judd Brewer, who's a psychiatrist and an addiction specialist and works a lot with anxiety and such things. And he's also got some wonderful resources online right now. So we were having a conversation once, and he was saying that in terms of some of his studies of meditation, he was looking at a brain region called the posterior cingulate cortex, or PCC. And he was looking at the experience of non-meditators and brand new meditators and more experienced meditators in terms of this particular brain region. And what he was saying was that when people feel guilty, this region is activated. And again, it's not a question of what we feel or what we don't feel, but when we're really kind of more sucked in, like we're more lost in guilt, that region is activated. When we have tremendous craving, remember he's an addiction psychiatrist, so when we have craving for different substances and we're more lost in those, we take that more to heart, that craving, that region is activated. When we're ruminating, that region is activated. When we're anxious, that region is activated. And what he was saying was that the subjective experience of having that particular brain region really activated is one of contraction. So being lost in anxiety, in guilt, in craving, in rumination has us feeling contracted, closed in, imprisoned, limited. And doesn't it? I mean, really, we can say that just from observation. And in contrast, when that particular brain region isn't so activated, we're not lost in anxiety, guilt, craving, rumination, the sense is one of expansiveness, openness. When we have loving kindness, it's the same thing. When we have insight or clarity, it's the same thing. It's a sense of expansiveness, of openness. And in that openness or expansiveness, we do have choice as to how we might want to respond or be with something. So talking about Judd also reminds me of, he's, I think, the only kind of contemporary scientist who's tested my brain. In the very early days of research, a team of people came here to the Insight Meditation Society, but it was way before so much neuroscience, and so they gave us Rorschachs and different kinds of tests, and that was very interesting. That was published in a book called Transformations of Consciousness. So it was some teachers, some staff people, some meditators. They also tested my teacher Deepama, which is very interesting. But in current times, I was visiting Judd, who is now at Brown University. At the time, he was at Yale. And he was trying to develop this cap with electrodes in it, because that would be a way to actually have much more readily available tests. I mean, you can't carry around an fMRI machine, and it's expensive too. So he was working on this cap, and I was staying with him. And the night before, I said to him, do you think you can test equanimity? So equanimity, remember, is a state of perspective, of spaciousness. Many things may happen, but the way we relate to them can be more equanimous than not. And that's part of our work. So we were just having this discussion. So the next day I went into his lab, and he, had me try on the cap, and it was like, my hair and gel and the electrodes, and it was a whole thing, and they couldn't get it to work for about 45 minutes. And at one point I said, Judd, I think my brain broke your cap. And he said, I hope not. That's like a $60,000 cap. But it was just some software glitch. And then they finally got it working. So Judd had said to me in that period, like, once we start, we can't stop and start again. So if, you say you're done, or you don't want to go any further, or you need a break, that's actually going to be the end, because, we can't like rewire you and do the whole thing. So I said, okay. So what he asked me to do was to meditate from 1 to 3 minutes. No particular direction. There's so many methods, which he gave me options. He said, just choose what you want to do each time. So to meditate 1 to 3 minutes, and then he asked me to describe my experience to him. So maybe I'd say, well, I was very sleepy. And then he would say to me, when in the period of time did you get sleepy? Was it at the beginning? Was it at the middle? Was it at the end? And so I would place my experience on this timeline. So it was like a kind of map of that short period of meditation. Then he'd spin his computer around, and I could see what my brain waves had looked like in that 1 to 3 minutes. And it was kind of awe-inspiring, because it matched totally my description of my experience. And then, time went by, and because I was continually meditating with just these interruptions to describe my experience, I was feeling kind of calmer as a general state. And I was interested in what was going on, and so on. And it got to the point where I had, during one of those 1 to 3 minute intervals, I had a lot of restless thinking. I thought, well, it's really too bad they had that 45-minute period in the beginning. It was like a complete waste. And I'd sort of like to stop at this point, but I can't really stop, because it would be the end of the experiment, and it's like so unfortunate. And but I felt like I wasn't sucked into those thoughts, and I also wasn't battling them, right? So I was just kind of watching the play of thoughts. And then, Judd, we ended that little interval, and he asked me, well, what was your experience? And I told him, and we kind of timed it out according to the map. And then he spun the computer around, and instead of my brainwaves being like all jagged and upset in some way, it was, you could see like the ripples, but it was kind of calm. And he said to me, remember when you asked if we could study equanimity? He said, that's equanimity. So it's really one of the tenets of mindfulness. Anything can arise. And you don't have to blame yourself or think you're doing badly. But what we're working with is how we're relating to it, and kind of that holding environment. And that really is our superpower, to be able to approach things differently. So why don't we practice some together now? See if you can sit comfortably, eyes open or closed. You can settle your attention into your body, onto your breath. This is just the normal, natural breath. Wherever you feel it most distinctly. And the operative word is rest. We're going to rest our attention. This may be at the nostrils or the chest or the abdomen. Just let the breath be natural. Let it come to you. Let it arrive in your awareness. If you like, you can use a quiet mental notation of in, out, or rising, falling to help support the awareness of the breath, but very quiet. So your attention is really going to feeling the breath, one breath at a time. It's just one breath. And if images or sounds or sensations or emotions should arise, but they're not very strong, if you can stay connected to the feeling of the breath, just let them flow on by. You're breathing. It's just one breath. But if something comes up and is very strong, thought, emotion, sensation, spend a few moments just recognizing, oh, this is what's happening right now. See if you can do that in that middle way, just recognizing without getting consumed by it, without pushing it away. It's like, oh, this is what's happening right now. And then see if you can let go and bring your attention back to the feeling of the breath. And for all those perhaps many times you're just gone, way lost in thought, or you fall asleep, don't worry about it. Remember, the most important moment is the next moment after we've been gone, after we've been lost, which is the moment we can practice letting go and we can practice beginning again. No matter how many times you have to do that, it's fine. Let's do some loving kindness practice together. Instead of centering your attention on the feeling of the breath, we're going to gently repeat certain phrases over and over again. The spirit of the phrases are offering or gift giving, blessing. We offer these phrases to ourselves and to others, ultimately to all beings everywhere. Beginning with ourselves, phrases are things like, may I be safe, be happy, be healthy, live with ease. May I be safe, be happy, be healthy, live with ease. People commonly say to me, well, who am I asking? And I say, well, we're not asking anybody. We're gift giving, we're offering. It's like you hand someone a birthday card and you say, may you have a great year. May I be safe, be happy, be healthy, live with ease. And the skill set is actually the same. You'll find your attention wandering. It's okay. See if you can let go and just come back to the phrases. Repeat the phrases over and over again with enough space and enough silence so that it's a rhythm that's pleasing to us. And you don't have to try to force a certain emotion or feeling. The power of the practice is in that gathering. May I be safe, be happy, be healthy, live with ease. And see if you can think of a benefactor. That's someone who's helped you. Maybe they've helped you directly, or you've never met them. They've inspired you from afar. The texts say this is the one who, when you think of them, you smile. Is there someone who lifts your spirits? They have you smile just thinking of them. Maybe it's an adult, maybe it's a child, maybe it's a pet. So if someone like that comes to mind, bring them here. You can get an image of them or say their name to yourself. Get a feeling for their presence and offer the phrases of loving kindness to them. Even if the words aren't perfect, they're the conduit of the heart's energy. They're serving us. May you be safe, be happy, be healthy, live with ease. And we're going to have a party, just a gathering, just see who comes to mind, friends, family, those you know who are doing well right now, those who are not doing so well right now. And as a collective, offer the phrases of loving kindness to them. May you be safe, be happy, be healthy, live with ease. And then all beings everywhere, all people, all creatures, all those in existence, near and far, known and unknown. May all beings be safe, be happy, be healthy, live with ease. And when you feel you're ready, you can open your eyes. We'll end the meditation session. So thank you so much for that. And we have time for a few questions.
Thank you so much, Sharon, for that. That was wonderful. I love the image of the mental meta party. That was really beautiful. So on that topic, we do have a question from someone about the meta practice. What are your thoughts about dropping the phrases once you feel sensations in your heart and staying with the sensations?
Metta, by the way, METTA, is another Pali word which means loving kindness or friendship. I think it's fine to drop the phrases, or they'll kind of recede anyway. And you don't have to feel, oh, I've got to say these phrases. They say that in any moment, one of three things may be predominant doing loving kindness practice. One is the phrase, one is the sense of the recipient, which may be a visual image or it may just be a sense of them. And the other is like a feeling of warmth. Could be almost a physical sensation, or it's just a sense of connection. And the reason I tend to emphasize the phrases so much is because, first of all, not everyone has a great facility in visualization. Although that's something we bring in, if you start to feel you're just saying these rote phrases, you could be saying anything, then it's probably good to have a much more acute sense of the recipient. So you might try to emphasize that for a few moments. And the feeling's not always there. So that's not a sign of success or failure. Because believe me, I have put in a lot of hours doing this practice feeling nothing and thinking nothing was happening, only to look back later and think, oh, isn't that interesting? Something was happening. Um, I wanted, like everyone probably wants, just that great burst of enormous love, and it may not be like that, but there's a very steady shift that's actually happening. It's very profound, although it can be subtle in our worldview, our sense of inclusion, our sense of who matters, who counts, the way we view ourselves. And it's happening even without that feeling. And so that's why I tend to emphasize the phrases, because it's something we can always go back to. But by no means do you have to like insist on them. If something else is more predominant, then that's totally fine.
So we have a question from someone about struggling with the tension between having this period of isolation feel like a good timing in terms of their own instincts to withdraw for a while, but at the same time it's a time when so much is needed in the world. So this person struggles with that tension.
I mean, I think that's very real, and something a lot of people are struggling with. I think that no matter what our physical circumstance, it's really important to foster a deeper sense of connection all the time. I mean, one of our problems and one of the reasons that things um, are so bad, are kind of profound states of disconnection between people. And it's one of the reasons the way loving kindness practice feels very important to me in this time, because even if you're not seeing people face to face, uh, there is an ever deepening sense of connection to others. And it's tricky, because we rely a lot on social cues and so on. But I think it's very important to do something like loving kindness practice. And to whatever extent you can actually connect with others in what might seem like very small ways, I think that's a very good thing. Somebody told me, a friend of mine who's in New York City, that he's gotten the phone numbers of some older people in his building, and he calls them, just to say hello, how you doing, and um, other people in New York City tell me that they've gotten to know their neighbors. They never knew them. They've lived in the same building for I don't know how many years, and they don't have parties or they're not physically getting together, but they've exchanged phone numbers and said, well, if you need anything, something happens, let me know, or something like that. So there might be ways that are also important to see if you can connect. It doesn't mean you have to in any way, violate that sense of privacy or solitude, which is kind of an interesting feature of this time, for sure. And underneath that, I think really is a commitment, which I certainly feel, to practices like loving kindness.
Thank you. We have a couple of questions on this topic. Feelings of frustration with governments and other people who are sort of handling a lot of elements of this crisis and trying to send metta to people in those positions, but with difficulty. How do you suggest holding this for people who seem to be exacerbating the difficult time we collectively are in?
Yes, that's always a very interesting question, and it's a powerful question. I don't think I think the loving kindness takes another flavor, oddly enough, which is the kind of compassion, uh, not in any way denying, that actions are consequential, and some people are causing a lot of suffering for a lot of people, and that's dreadful, and so I wouldn't ever want to deny that and sort of say, well, it's okay. It's not okay. Um, and uh, and yet, if we are consumed with the actions of someone else, there's just a balance there. If we're consumed or obsessed with the actions of someone else, then we are the ones who are really going to suffer all the more. Um, so it's being able to hold a very clear sense of right and wrong according to our views, our principles, and our values, and also commitment to rectify those wrongs. I mean, people are in power because they've been put in power. And I've long had a commitment to things like voter registration, for example. And I know a lot of people who are involved in meditation practice or spiritual work that they're not necessarily engaged. And, so I think that it's really important to reevaluate that and look at that, but not from a place of hatred, because it will only end up destroying us. I have, interestingly enough, in my forthcoming book, Real Change, um, a whole chapter on moving from anger to courage. Not that anger's bad or wrong, uh, and it can be a very intelligent response to things we see, when people are being harmed. But um, if we get overcome by it and defined by it, we're going to be the ones that suffer, and our action will be all the less effective. We actually can't do that much when we're just stewing. And so I decided when I was writing the book, I thought, oh, I want to use that Gandhi quote where he said something like, and again, this isn't to say you should denounce what you're feeling. We feel what we feel, but getting overwhelmed by something or cultivating it as the means of response is going to be consequential. So the quote was something like, to be lost in anger is like drinking a cup of poison, hoping it'll kill the other guy. And so I looked it up because I wanted to use it in the book. So as you know, we have to source it. So I didn't see that it was attributed to Gandhi at all, but I saw it attributed to Nelson Mandela and Oprah Winfrey and the Big Book of AA and like all these other people. So I actually have no idea who said it originally. It's just great wisdom, because think about that. So we find that balance as best we can between observing what we feel and honoring it, and realizing there can be a lot of intelligence in there and a lot of energy in there, and not just diving right in and getting overwhelmed by it, because uh, it's not going to be helpful to ourselves or to others in the end.
So I think we'll make this the last question. But a couple people have asked a similar question, which is that this time period has sort of brought up a life review, um, and feelings of judgment towards one's past, maybe a lot of poor choices or issues of not being loving or compassionate enough. So how do we reconcile with these feelings now?
Well, interestingly, in the Buddhist psychology, there's a distinction that can be made between what we'd call remorse and what we'd call guilt. Like, remorse is not a pleasant state, it's a very painful state, but it's kind of a rightful state. It's a helpful state, because maybe we have caused harm, or we've created disharmony, or we've been reckless, or something like that. And if we can see that and feel the pain of that and let go of it in the sense of forgiving ourselves and moving on with a determination to be different, that's actually a useful state. Whereas guilt is described as more corrosive kind of self-hatred, where we just stay stuck. We go over and over and over that incident as though that's all we were or capable of, and that's not true. So it's considered unskillful or unhelpful. It's not onward leading in any way. And so if you feel yourself falling from remorse into guilt, you can remind yourself, everything changes, everyone changes. Um, we act from the wisdom or the capacity we are exercising at the time. It can be different. Let me take this time, this recollection, and resolve to be different.
Thank you so much, Sharon.
Thank you.
So a few closing notes for us today, which is that this will be recorded, so don't worry about that. You can watch the replay at tricycle.org/live, where you'll also see the breakdown of our upcoming sessions, which include Thursday evening with Lama Suryadas, and this Friday with Jack Kornfield, and then also this Sunday with Pema Chödrön. And next week we have a special offering with Andrew Holacek on the Bardo teachings from Tibetan Buddhism. So please check tricycle.org/live for all of those. And we are offering these all for free, and we really are appreciative that we're able to do that for everyone to access them. But if you're willing and able to make a contribution to support our efforts, please consider doing that at tricycle.org/donate. We also note that Sharon's course, The Whole Path, is a really wonderful resource in this time, and it's still open for enrollment. So you can learn more about that at learn.tricycle.org. We're so grateful to you, Sharon, for being here today and practicing with us and sharing all these wonderful teachings. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all.
All right, well, that's it for us. Goodbye, everyone, and please stay healthy and safe in this time.